Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to our regular, or should I say, slightly more irregular Wednesday stream. I'm sorry, guys, we haven't had the most time to stream recently because of obviously we've been rather busy with a whole bunch of stuff. One of which was launching the book, which we'll get to in a second. Um, but I thought it was quite an important topic today, since it's come up in the news so much, and it's stuff that again we covered a bit years ago. You might remember a stream I did with Spoon a while ago about naval power on this channel. But also, there's a couple of our Substack pieces which deal with this quite heavily. So it's kind of a good opportunity to talk about industrial decline in general, but also how the current lies really about manufacturing capabilities in Europe, in Britain, and in America are all hitting the reality wall when it comes to the quote unquote missile gap in in Ukraine and in Israel as well. But before I do that, I will say hello, all you little people in my computer. Hello there, Aiden. I will also be going after this. Once we finish here, I'll be going on Broken Crown. So I'll be handing over to that stream at the end of this stream. So we'll probably just be going for about an hour today. But it's a relatively compact topic, and I'm joined by, I guess, semi-regular guest of the channel now, Lewis. Say hello there, Lewis.
Hello.
I might try and add a. You've got some. I might try and add a noise thing for you, because you've got your microphone has been terrible, I must say, recently. But it's
yeah, it's very sensitive. It picks up all sorts.
Noise suppression. There we go. I should have done this last time, but
yeah, I saw a lot of people were saying, "God, that mic sounds tasty."
It's just I should have done this before I got on air, but I'm currently God damn it. There we go. Cancel. I've got like noise gates and all sorts put on it now. So let me make sure you're still coming through. But say something.
Okay.
There you go. Okay.
Hello, biscuits and gravy.
I have now cleaned up your audio at least a smidge.
Okay.
Whoosh whoosh. You now have audio filters.
Woo!
Oh right, I should take the compression off.
That's right
then. Yeah, that's probably better.
Okay.
Oh dear.
We'll find out when everyone starts. Are you having a boomer tech moment now?
Yes, I am. I turned the compressor off and it boosted your volume like 500%. But I've now fixed your audio, I think. So, hooray. Smashing. Indeed, smashing.
Smashing.
Because it was smashing through the red on my monitors there. That was, I don't know, I've got to say, was before I came on air, and I know you were a teeny bit late as well, but I also had like an absolute nightmare, and the OBS had decided to change everything about how it handled the audio for some reason. It decided my input volume was about 50% of what it was last time I used it. So thank you for that, OBS. But anyway,
yeah.
Anyway, I'll get a bit of shilling out of the way. If you guys want to support us, you can buy. You can buy book. I'll be going through how buying book. Link is in the description and the pinned comment. I should also try and add some annotations here. You can support us via the Ko-Fi. Again, link in the description. That's the most tax-free way to support us. But we are still fully monetized on YouTube somehow, still to this day. So if you want to send super chat, super stickers, and all that good stuff, we have many ways you can support us. And I'll probably be going through at the end some of our buy book mantras, but it's been very successful. People have already been receiving books. I will say that's very good. So I'll do some more book shilling at the end. But since we've got quite a lot to get through, I will not prevaricate around the bush. Well, I wanted to have you on, Lewis, because you're someone who has a bit of a manufacturing background or a technical background as well.
Yeah.
But one of the rare people still left in Britain, really. There's not many people. If you look at this, this is only to 2021, but I don't think this tells the full picture, because Britain and America both have the same problem. I think America's is worse. We'll get onto that in a bit, because I found out something today that I didn't find out. I reminded myself of something today, which is that US manufacturing numbers are just a massive lie, but we'll get into those. But yeah, here's the UK manufacturing as share of GDP. As just a background, those of you who don't know, I'm not quite sure how you don't know, But Britain used to manufacture real good, and now it don't manufacture so good no more. And all of this took place while Britain was apparently getting stronger and better and fairer? Question mark.
Apparently, question mark, big question mark on that. Extra doubt. Extra doubt.
Well, you've seen some of the stuff that I've seen, and that I think we all know that since 2020, this has also gone off a cliff even further.
Oh yeah, definitely, absolutely. One of the things I would say as well, not just more so recently, the number of videos that you can find on YouTube that talk about they tend to prevaricate around the bush, so to speak, about the decline in the amount of manufactured weaponry at any scale in both America. I mean, you could probably just say just the West in general, which is big, obviously Britain, America, Canada, Australia, and that sort of stuff.
I think what's happening is that we're seeing the fruits of all this, and the background here. Oops, sorry, I'm knocking my mic there. The background here is that we have basically detonated our domestic manufacturing here. There's another good one here which shows manufacturing jobs since 1978. Those have more than halved. And you'll see in both cases that manufacturing jobs have, you'll see in this case that manufacturing jobs have tracked relatively closely with manufacturing output. We have automated quite heavily in this country, but manufacturing output has dropped. Manufacturing jobs have dropped a bit faster because of automation, but you see that GDP percentage, it's not perfect because it doesn't give us raw industrial capacity. There is nothing that does that currently. We have no way really of knowing how bad it is, because as a percent of GDP, it's a bit deceptive, I think.
It is absolutely deceptive, because I think the other thing you need to take into consideration is, are we tracking just GDP, or are we tracking nominal GDP? Are we factoring in inflation rates for the GDP? Because that might show that it might be actually even worse. I actually mentioned this many years ago to my own mother and my father, is that the industry that I'm in, again to do with manufacturing machining, it's probably half the size. If you base it on GDP, that says about 10%. It's probably more like 5% if you wanted to halve it to factor in for like inflation since it says 45 there, but when you factor it in, you start realizing that it's probably a lot smaller. Like the real value of the products made is even smaller than what the GDP says it is.
Thank you for the £5 at Corolanus. I can't quite say your name there. I'm having trouble with it. But no, we don't just talk about politics all the time. I guess last stream we did say it was cruel to red pill people who aren't looking to be red pilled. But the case is that, like, we just talk about normal stuff in the pub. That's what we talk about. You talk about pub stuff. You talk about shite. You talk about darts and football and the pints and all the stuff and the dogs in the pub and the weather and what you've been doing. Politics comes up sometimes, but honestly, like, normal pub politics is much closer to what we talk about than hyper real online politics is. So we're fine. If anything, what we do is we bring the pub politics into the online realm with all the weird screeching and Americanization and all that. I think we're a lot more compatible with the pub than we are with online politics in many ways. So that's how. But to be fair, manufacturing decline is a topic that I've talked about in the pub before with people, especially to do with the defense industry, in that there was a lot more of it. And there's a lot of people around here, and the northwest of England was quite big for defense. There's quite a few people around here who used to work in the defense industry, but don't anymore. And it's this bizarre thing where we're supposed to be persecuting some form of war against Russia while we can't manufacture anything. But we're going into the actual specifics of that in a bit. Again, here's manufacturing jobs. This is something that completely took me by surprise, which is apparently U.S. manufacturing. God, I think I've lost one of the other images here. But U.S. manufacturing has increased, apparently linearly. God, it has disappeared. But U.S. manufacturing has increased whilst U.S. manufacturing jobs have cratered. In the UK, we've seen that manufacturing output has decreased within a pretty tight ratio to manufacturing labor. That hasn't happened in America. but only on paper. Because really what you see in America is that America tends to bundle, it's supposed to have what it calls value-added manufacturing statistics, which means they factor out the stuff that was made overseas. But a lot of what US manufacturing is companies basically secretly or semi-secretly slapping their label on Chinese goods or imported goods. And that you have this situation in America where they're saying that the manufacturing has increased, that manufacturing has only ever gone up, even as 4 million, and it is 4 million if you look at this chart. It's 17 million in the 1990s, and then you hit a cliff at the tail end of the Clinton administration. And the thing is, you can't tell where the changeover was here. It's interesting in that US manufacturing statistics definitely do cross political boundaries, and that you can't blame either party for this. It started under Clinton and continued under Bush Jr. This free fall from about 1998 all the way down here to about 2002, 2003. You get this precipitous drop, and then it levels off, and then you get the recession, and it drops again. And you get, again, 4 million people from 1990 to now have been wiped off of US manufacturing. Well, apparently it's been increasing. One of the best explanations for this is just the fact that exactly what you think is happening. They are labeling assembled in the USA goods as full value goods, putting them into the economic calculus and going, oh, well, we've shed 4 million manufacturing jobs, but automation has meant that we've still kept things going, because the big handwave here is automation. But Britain's automated too. In fact, Britain's arguably automated more heavily than anywhere apart from Germany in many cases, and yet we've seen manufacture decline with manufacturing jobs here in the UK. Whereas in the US, that doesn't seem to be the case.
A nice video that it's not to do with weapons manufacturing. I'm trying to remember the name of the video. It's Smarter Every Day is the name of the YouTube channel. I'm forgetting the gentleman that runs it. He was trying to make a cast iron scrubbing brush with a handle, right? And he wanted the entire thing to be made and manufactured in the US. It's about 40 minutes. So after this stream, I would recommend that everybody goes and watches that just to get an idea about what John has. John has just said here.
It's fine. He's already on there.
I would recommend that you go watch that video, because it's rather eye-opening, because it's not the manufacturing side that we're talking about is obviously with weapons, but this goes deeper than just weapons. It also goes into basic consumer goods that you would think would be quite easy to make and they're practically impossible to make in the US.
Yes.
I'll just leave that there.
You'll also, I'm not getting into some of the sticky stuff about the China supply chain side for US arms.
Oh,
that would
that would
have been an hour in of itself. We know it happens.
Yeah.
We don't fully know to the degree it happens. But the way I wanted to get this out of the way and bundle this in is because we know this happens generally in American manufacturing, and it's much less honest than it is in Britain, which has just gone for, industrial output as share of GDP. We don't try and tart up semi-imported goods in the same way. I guess the US has to prove it's still the leader in manufacturing, whereas it hasn't been since the 1990s, really. That was the crossover point, and everyone knows it was a crossover point by about 2008, but there's this pretense that America still manufactures in a way that is comparable to its historic output. It doesn't, and really this is due to the Obama administration. Every administration has to say that they have brought American jobs back when they haven't, and they've put up American production also when they haven't. Foreign goods to be considered US goods. It is a lot of it is to do with just recategorizing things that have a label slapped on them in the US to US created goods. That's where the disparity between the previous chart and the stated, continuous increase in US industrial output comes from. But what we're talking about more specifically today is this. Oh God, this page does not format well on desktop. That's kind of annoying. I guess it's just about in range here. There we go.
Bugger it, it'll do.
There we go. It's just, you can just about, that's got to, this is from militarywatchmagazine.com, but this isn't too bad. There's a couple of figures quoted here. The figure quoted is 800 million. The Hertz article over here, oh God, it's trying to fucking capture check me for. They must be doing DDoS on archive.org, so you get to watch me do a capture. Live capture.
Oi, mate, you got a license to be on this page.
Fuck off. Well, there's a Hertz article as well, and that's just really, really annoying now that it's refreshed and decided to give me a capture. But I guess that's why it wasn't working particularly well earlier. Yeah, archive. We use it for a lot of stuff, but like archive does tend to go down quite a lot these days. There we go. Come on, give me the page. But there's a Hertz article here too, which is quoting a 1.25 billion figure for the amount of THAAD missiles. They're kind of big thermal detonation. They work by having a large detonation radius for taking out missiles. But these supposedly cost 12 to 16 million each, depending on whatever estimate you're using. Yeah, it seems archive.org is being currently DDoSed, but this has got most of what we need in it. Yeah, 12 to 15 million each. The problem with this is, as it says here, that this represents 15 to 20% of the entire stockpile of these things. And also this represents about a year and a half's worth of production. There were 93 missiles fired. 39 interceptors, blah, 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 blah. But the 93 missiles are estimated to be fired. And it's 1.25 billion, guys. It seems
very
that...
expensive.
Yes, it seems that they are actually just firing money into the sky. And the reason... Well, it's not actually 1.25 billion. We all know that there is a lot of padding in this. And we'll get to that in a second. But they estimate that there were 500 Iranian missiles fired. But the question about that is that, well, Iran has been exporting them for about $250,000 each. The actual cost of making them, when you get to the cruise missiles and you get to the quote-unquote drones and the loitering munitions they use and the short-range munitions, but in terms of the long-range munitions they use, they are a lot more efficient. And that really has been the story of how Iran has become a very valuable partner to Russia in terms of the Ukraine war, in that they are able to make precision-guided munitions for a fraction of the price of basically everyone else. They sell the cheapest functional guided munitions in the world. And what you really see is an attrition war where you have Iran, who can make a lot of these things rather cheaply, firing missiles and effectively just not even picking targets. Most of them were aimed at open areas. But both the Ukraine and Israel have to shoot down all of the missiles coming over because they can't quite tell where they're going to go. You can get some idea from ballistic trajectory, but they just have to lock on the missiles, the counter missile systems, and fire them at them. And it seems that the tactic here from Iran has been to bait out massive amounts of air defense to the point that America and Israel panic about missile depletion and rush for a ceasefire. And it's this bizarre kind of judo of resources where low resource, low cost ballistic missiles that aren't going to do a particularly large amount of damage but would be politically unpalatable to be allowed to land are shot down by extremely expensive, extremely scarce, and extremely hard to manufacture munitions with these massive convoluted supply lines. And even though technically the US and Israel can show off the fact they've shot down these missiles, every missile they shoot down is in of itself a defeat. It is an extremely interesting situation in attrition warfare.
It is very interesting. It's very much similar. I remember when the Ukrainian war started off, and I remember that there was it was the massive counteroffensive that Ukraine launched against Russia. It was going to go down to the south. I think it was in 2023, if everyone remembers that roughly. And I recall looking at the rough estimates of the number of Bradleys that were basically knocked out, not necessarily destroyed. They were just casualties. Basically, you'd have to. They were knackered. They got damaged, whether they were completely destroyed or partially or whatever. Doesn't really matter. About 50% it was 50% of all the Bradleys that have been sent to Ukraine were currently incapacitated at the time.
Well, they were probably
Which
more
is- it's
useful
massive.
incapacitated, because I've heard nothing but awful things about the, I remember someone referred to the F-35 as the Bradley of the sky, which is one of the worst
Yes.
insults you could give it. But
I used to have a conversation with an American chap that was actually, he was ground crew. He actually worked on some of the F-35s. He did some maintenance work on them, and he said it was a fucking nightmare. You basically need I don't know how big the server is, but you need a single server's worth of data processing to just fly one of them. Just one of them. Like, so the infrastructure is just, it's too much to run the damn thing, let alone do maintenance on it. I think he mentioned something about the maintenance hours on it, which was just retarded. It was way too expensive to do maintenance on the aircraft, but that's something else.
I've just realized that this has someone called Elaine Albuquerque. What?
Elaine or Ahlaine.
Elaine is that supposed to be a name? Or is that supposed to be a place?
or is it a pseudonym?
I have no. It might be. The thing is, I actually found some research here. Basically, what they're talking about is the fact that Iran makes cheap weapons. It's a whole scientific paper to basically say that. But there is research going into the fascinating field of Iran and Russia forcing NATO to waste money by firing munitions at them that are worth a fraction of the munitions used to shoot them down. It's a whole genre at this point.
That's like what happened when the October 7th happened in Israel. It was the exact same thing, because they were talking. I remember it was only brief, but there was a discussion about the fact that the Palestinians were making essentially cheap, really cheap RPG warheads for about $100.
Yeah.
That was the equivalent. They were making them for $100, but they were just as effective as just. What can you say? It's just. But yeah, this is another point as well. Those THAAD batteries that knocked out those rockets, I guarantee that they didn't knock out every single rocket that was launched by Iran, because you can't knock all of them out. I'm curious about the percent that failed to actually counteract the Iranian missiles. That's what I'm curious about, because they fired that many, but how many of them actually did what was intended?
Well, it's just 11 days. 11 days of mid-intensity combat, and that's the point here, that it is mid-intensity combat that we've seen. It is mid. It is, but we are seeing something very extraordinary.
It's a mid-off.
Yeah, it's a mid. The NATO seems to be a very large gun with only like 3 bullets. Is how it comes across.
It's a revolver. It's a revolver versus a machine gun.
Kinda, it's a very fancy, nice revolver versus a slightly rough machine gun.
Yes.
But that's usually what wins. Here it is, finally, yeah. 500 missiles, 200 intercepts, 5 billion shekels. They're measuring it in shekel. This is why I wanted this archive version.
Oh, Yaheim!
5 billion. Okay. First of all, I would like to channel my inner merchant and ask you to please do interact with the video. Do leave a comment saying how much you appreciate Al Gore's rhythms, or, alternatively, and the superior option, do leave a comment saying how much you do love the nation of Israel. It's the only democracy in the Middle East, don't you know?
Yes. Yeah, and we all know that we all love Israel.
Yes. Hopefully they can re-get some of that 5 billion shekels.
It's 5 grillion.
10 reporting impact said that the whole point though is that you have this situation. Yeah, 1.5 billion. They've got that wrong there. That's supposed to be 1.5 billion, not million. Because hertz is actually a bit rough, but still, this is a relatively good estimate. It's from the footage from Jordan. And the IDF says they also used some of their missile system. So it is a total of 1.5 billion in missiles between the two, with the THAAD missiles being the ludicrously expensive ones. I should have closed that down. That one. The other one is the loitering munitions. This isn't a long range missile per se, but the Shahad 136 is a loitering munition. It's technically an old style smart munition. We've had these since the 1970s. A lot of them can detect radar and have a loiter mode, as in they will wait around for a target and someone will switch on either a radar station or something that puts off a signal it can detect, and then it will go for it.
Pings.
Yeah, it basically
pings
is
pings off of it, and then it basically homes in onto where it is, and then goes. Pow.
Those of you who know what a loitering munition is, it's a loitering munition, but it's also a bloody cheap one.
I think the technical term is it's a drone seed missile, isn't it? It's a
loitering. Everyone always said drone. No, it's a loitering munition. These things existed before quote unquote drones did. It's a loitering munition. And anyway, that is the technical term for it. But the reason for this, and the reason why all these things have such a price differential, is because where am I now? God, let's say I'll just read out some of the more statistics here because it's quite impactful. The U.S. military industrial complex is a giant job stimulus first and an arms industry a distant second. Again, you've got 13 million to 15 million per intercept. Iran and Russia are baiting out expensive munitions with cheap munitions, as I said earlier. NATO's strategy depends on missiles being intercepted to protect their sparse, fragile equipment. That is the other part of this equation, and the part I was trying to look for, because I was forgetting my actual point there, was that NATO equipment is very dependent on the idea of a missile screen. All of the NATO powers, to a degree, have bought into this idea that they will always have total air superiority and they will always have a missile screen. Because if you don't, then forward deployments just get mushed. They get wiped out as soon as you try and move into an area that's covered by your enemy. This doctrine has not borne out. They are not able to continue even medium-intensity warfare over a matter of weeks, never mind a matter of months. It is a matter of days before these munitions start to run out in what was effectively a missile pissing contest between Iran and Israel. I've had this on stream before, the military stimulus complex, but really what you have to understand is that the F-35, all of these projects are a result of the fact that the main produce of the defense industry in America is not armament. It is not missiles. It is middle-class pensions. It is high-paying technical jobs. And most of all, it is diversity hire positions and bloated, nested subcontractor stimulus to keep the entirety of the US economy going. When you understand that that doesn't represent 1.25 billion in missiles, it represents 1.25 billion in Lizzos, you begin to understand what that means. Well, it does. Each that's why I've got the little Lizzo rocket in the corner. Each American THAAD missile comes with like 50 Lizzos attached. That's the whole point. Like, look at this. This is from 2020. This is Northrop Grumman, and I had them. They were in my skills collapse thing. I might get that other one on screen as well. But they were posting on LinkedIn about the fact that they had won an award for having Sandra Evers Manley, emphasis on the Manley. She was the Diversity and Inclusion Executive of the Year. And Northrop Grumman was celebrating that. I know a lot of people talk about woke. Woke's a front end of it. It's one of the worst excesses of it. But that stimulus existed before that. And really, for every woke DEI person attached to it, it has 15 Lizzos attached to it, but it has 15,000, Joe in Alabamas. It has 15,000 Rachel in accounts. It has all these American jobs tied to it, to the point that people do not understand that in the way the NHS is a giant job stimulus for Britain. The American military industrial complex doesn't create missiles, it creates jobs. And those jobs are mostly busy work.
Just to hammer that home in a slightly more serious point, is that essentially all of the military spending in the US, and obviously you could really expand this again, you could expand it to many Western countries as well, do the same thing with Russia to an extent as well, because they have some similar problems with this. You'd have to look into all that in a more specific, but it's not the exact same. I understand that because there's retained a lot of the industry, but the spending essentially it's jobs, but it's also just a means of just laundering money.
Yes, there's a lot of corruption that goes on here.
Yeah. And like the contracts as well, if you look at what the contracts are for, they're not really for, it's not even necessarily just to keep people employed either. It's literally just to have, oh, I've got an expensive tool or piece of equipment that costs this much. I need grant money for this. You launder the majority of it. And then say the project or the vehicles, just put it on back burner. Like it takes, we've had delays. You could just fob it off. It's literally just to try and drain money out of a stone, if you really want to look at it. And you can tell that that's the case because the constant discussion, especially within NATO and the Telegraph does this because they've got this new what is it now? Some discussion about possibilities of future conflict, and they're doing this propaganda. They never ever talk about whether or not they have the personnel. They don't have the people. They never discuss about we need more people in and then have an actual discussion about that. They're constantly talking about what new equipment, what new shiny bauble can we use to win.
Yes.
They never talk about actually having, at the end of the day, you need people to run, man, and operate all of the equipment. If the people aren't there, it doesn't matter how fancy it is. There's nobody to operate it.
No. And again, I'm abridging here because I need to get onto that because I'm not talking about North Korea. North Korea has just been going shells this entire time.
It's impressive.
Yes. I might do something that covers some of that at a later date, but it's just, the thing is there's so much stuff and there's so much detail in all of that I wanted to cover the NATO side of it a bit more specifically here. Because really what's happened is that we have become very much dependent. There's still this stubborn idea in Britain, America, and Europe that we can have very small armies because we have very advanced technology and no one would attack us because we'd just wipe them out with our advanced technology. But that hasn't gone out.
We punch above our weight. Punch above our weight. That is the constant phrase you will hear by even ex-military people that are obviously social media influencers and stuff, right? Oh, but the British Army always punches above its weight. It's small, but it's much stronger than it looks. So that constantly, it's that whole mentality.
Well, all of this has led to an admission that America cannot support all of its military misadventures. The reality has come crashing in, and we've seen the fact that only a fraction of the munitions that are used can be replaced within the span of a year. So think of the US defense industry as an infinite DMV with an infinite budget. Military reality is the entirety of NATO cannot produce enough arms for Israel, to keep itself stocked, to keep Israel stocked, to keep Ukraine stocked, and to go on adventures in Yemen and Iran. But really this begs the question of, well, how did we get here? We talked about general decline and managerialism, but one of the big things, I've got a quick insert here, is that what happens in NATO is that weapon systems aren't decided by the market. They are set mostly top down. You'll sometimes have defense contractors that have fancy weapons they'll try and flog, but most of it is procurement based in both areas. So this idea that Britain and America and NATO do better because they're harnessing the free market is false. There's no free market economy in defense because you can't have the private procurement of defense. If you want to know how to do private procurement of defense, read some Hopper. But it doesn't exist in the Western world because both China and NATO are different ideologically in their window dressing, but they are both representatives of managerial powers, NATO being the formalization of the American empire and China being a communist nation. But you have these very important differences that China identifies a requirement, it directly allocates resources, and then it centrally produces the arms that it wants. It doesn't try to have the pretense of a free market like NATO does. But NATO does the first step the same. It has all the procurement is the same. it's all set centrally. Both China and America have an almost identical central procurement process in that it all just comes from above. But they indirectly allocate the resources in that they will set a budget, and instead of them going, well, the factories that we control directly will now produce this armaments, they tender it out to pre-approved contractors, which don't exist in the marketplace anyway. You're not actually going to compete with Lockheed Martin. You can't just go out and go, hey, I'm going to make my own Patriot missiles and I can do it cheaper. You will get raided. And people talk about, oh, well, our advantage over China is the free market. What free market? And then they, quote unquote, privately produce. They privately produce these arms. And they're not produced privately. And having these extra steps, having this extra bloat, is really what leads NATO to be unable to magic up weapons. The only time that they talk about World War II and all the the wartime production stuff and the fact that democracies can ramp up, but for war economies to take hold in Western nations, they inevitably have to have all that suspended. So unless they want to go into a proper kind of war powers command economy, they're never going to be able to.
It has to be centrally planned.
Yeah. It does.
It essentially you would have to have the country operate more like China. You would probably have to also. I'm trying to remember this exactly. It's a form of I want to say it's Keynesian economics, but it's specifically war economics. If I remember correctly. Well, I think that's right.
It's to do really with the old. A lot of this hasn't been tested since the 40s. It's to do with the old style of economic planning, where you kind of turbo Keynesianism. You have the government and private sector hold hands in quotes, and then you have resources allocated more centrally. But again, it is just communism. Both of these processes are quite entropic because a central command economy is just bad in general for your population, for your industry, and it will eventually consume all the resources and political capital in your nation. But the thing is that NATO pretends it is not made up of command economies when it is. It's just made up of command economies that have to maintain the pretense that they aren't. And maintaining that pretense, along with all the pet political projects and the massive social stimulus needed, makes the procurement of arms almost impossible in the West, because we have a process that is quite simply less efficient. There's a political article here. Europe's arms production is in, to quote, deep shit, says Belgian ex-general. Europe's armament production shortfalls are a symptom of a cultural problem to adapt to war-ready industry. Retired General Mark Thies tells Politico. And what he's talking about so again.
I was just gonna say, what do they mean by cultural problem in like quotation marks? What's that meant to refer to?
Oh, the article itself is just fluff. He basically says that people aren't adopting a wartime mindset enough. They don't have
okay. So it's basically just the same propaganda that you're just hearing all the time. Like, but we need to win the public over. We need to get the public in. We need to just keep hammering the public until they accept we are going to have a war, basically.
Yeah. TNT wanted Europe's, this is from Euroactiv, Europe's ammunition push is missing its explosive core. For now, a single Polish factory is propping up Europe's ammunition ambitions. Europe's, this is from July, this is from this month. Europe's grand plans to surge ammunition production hinge on a single factory in central Poland, the only place in the EU that still makes TNT, the explosive core of most weapons production. We just don't... thing is,
with the boomstick, I don't know how to make it anymore. Make the Poles do it.
Well, a large problem has been outsourcing, in that NATO powers especially have been pressured into, and we'll get on to American hegemony soon, but they've been pressured into accepting American arms. But America has been just outsourcing at an alarming rate. Here we have why Trump is considering Korea for naval shipbuilding efforts. America has been shopping around the Far East, the Near East, bits, they've had a look at Europe and realized it doesn't have any arms industry, really. But they're now floating South Korea as a place that will build them ships. But also South Korea is undergoing a massive population collapse and is quietly in crisis. Yep. So I don't know how these things would materialize.
It won't work. It won't It will not work. Look, we'll just say it bluntly. It will not work. It's desperation for a collapsing empire. That is what it is.
But you have a problem here again where you have the supply lines getting longer. You're bringing in more and more and more countries, and things getting more and more fragile.
Yeah, exactly. It's doubling down on. Oh, well, we can't do it here, so we need to get like Jamal to like do it over in India. We'll get him to do it, but then, like you just said, you're stretching the supply lines. So, although on paper it looks like we've got more ships building and blah blah. Yeah, but the quality's lower. The safety standards are not there. You can't make them as fast as you think you can. They're not as efficient, and it bumps into the Jevons paradox for economic growth, which is that as you make technological advancements in certain fields, it results in it appears to be more efficient, but what happens is that your overall economy becomes less efficient because you're actually using more resources, and thereby actually costs more to keep everything running.
Yes.
So on paper it looks all right, but it costs you more and more and more.
That's the big thing.
You're digging yourself deeper and deeper. Sorry. In
the general sense, and you are right. No, I was just adding to your point there. That replacing low energy, low impact, low skilled labor with high intensity, high energy automation, and then outsourcing parts of your supply chain. You're right. Nobody does the full energy equations there. Nobody understands if that is actually more. It's more roundabout, which is what Keynesianism really wants. It wants a more roundabout process, so there can be more.
It looks all right.
Yes, it makes it look better on paper, but again, all of this, people don't understand that when you automate, you don't remove jobs. You condense unskilled labor into skilled labor. And if you're having a massive skilled labor crisis, then you can't do that process. You can't automate without skilled labor. This is an opinion piece from Defense News. The U.S. Navy risks outsourcing control of its drones. What they're talking about is the fact that the U.S. doesn't really produce the batteries, the components, basically everything needed for the new generation of drones. It's interesting because America was one of the first people to use drones. They had the Predator drones, they had military drones, they cost $1 bajillion each. But they were very, very lax and very late to the table on what I value drones, cheap drones, grenades strapped to Chinese crap, basically.
Yeah. In fact, I've actually seen what they've been doing more recently as well. What they've started doing is they're not even just sticking with just air drones. What I forget what you call them. It's those they're not, are they segways?
Yeah.
But it's the ones where you just stand on them. You don't have a handle. I forget what you call them now.
Like a hoverboard. Yeah.
Yes, that's it. Hoverboards. They've started getting hoverboards. They've got two of them together, and they're making essentially World War II Goliath mines.
Wow.
With hoverboards. Yes, that's literally what they're doing.
Hoverboard Goliath. Well, it's the whole
hoverboard. Yeah. So they're literally strapping Russian. Not even that. They're also using those as casualty clearing vehicles instead of having bespoke made ones. They've been modified where they've got three of them together, and they've made like rubber tracks. So they've got like tracked version of it with three. Some of the stuff that they're coming out with there in Ukraine is mental. So they've now got cheap land-based drones now using hoverboards.
Well, that is the point in that America has wrapped itself up in this idea that procurement comes from the top, whereas in China and Russia, they've turned to the commercial market and gone, right, what can we strap together for the cheapest unit price? And we've ended up with this situation where it's almost like we are the Germans, in that we're making Tiger tanks against,
yes.
It's very.
It's like, but we need to change the position of the hatch, because like we've made 30 of them, but we've found a more efficient way for the hatch to be on, and we can change the ventilation system. So you're constantly retooling all the equipment that you're making all the time. I know exactly what you mean.
It's Russia is now the one with the Stens. We're trying to make Thompsons while Russia is making Stens. That's really what's going on here. World War,
Yeah.
it's the lesson of World War Two was it's about production, stupid, and it's about minimum viable weapon, minimum
Is it
viable
good
weapon.
enough to
Yeah,
do the job?
minimum
It's not
viable
about having
weapon.
the best. Yeah. It's not about the best thing you've got. It's about, is it good enough? Because good enough in large enough quantities will squash your opponent every single time. It's not this one-on-one boxing match where you've got two top-end fighters proper going at it and the best match. It's not about that. The average guy with an average piece of equipment, with average food, average logistical system will defeat the guy that's got all the, bespoke Gucci equipment every single time,
The
because
most,
you can
yeah,
build more of it.
I think we've skimmed over a lot here, and again, we're coming towards the kind of our last point here. But I wanted to make sure we have a good discussion, because one of my favorite parts of this equation is that really what they're doing is they're in reverse and forward at the same time. They're pressing accelerate and the brake. They're all over the place. It's one arm doesn't know what the other arm is doing. One's pushing, one's pulling. And the best example of this is the fact that America, to make sure that no one can make weapons faster than America, deliberately hollows out its industrial partners and its vassal states, like in Europe, and has been doing so for decades. America deliberately hollowed out the UK defense industry. It has deliberately hollowed out the European defense industry. It has made the Europe dependent on buying extremely expensive munitions from America that were never meant to be used, and it's 15 Lizzos and 1,500 American manufacturing jobs, in quotes. And what you're doing is you're really just subsidizing American payrolls. You're not actually buying weapons that were ever meant to be used. This is from Political. Why cheap US gas costs a fortune in Europe? European politicians are pointing the finger at US gas sellers, but the blame is closed. They're basically talking, a lot of this is papered over by, we should be doing the green transition. But what happened is that America created a war in Ukraine with Russia. It blew up Nord Stream 2. And then it demanded that its security partners manufacture weapons while the energy prices were doubling. The defense industry is one of the most energy-intensive industries. It requires a massive amount of resources. It requires a huge pulling together of old-style production economics, of heavy industry. And you can't do heavy industry if your main ally has just caused your energy prices to double. And that is the big thing here, that you propaganda outlets try and frame this as a failure of decarbonization in an attempt to hide the fact the USA is manufacturing an energy price and trade advantage at gunpoint. We have it here. The messy affair of divorcing Russian gas and bridging EU's energy price cap. The problem is that America, by creating this differential, has once again tried to enrich itself at the expense of Europe. But in doing so, they have made sure that Europe's manufacturing can't help out its war aims. They have crippled Europe. They have made it so that manufacturers can't economically viably manufacture in Europe compared to America because of energy prices. And then they've criticized Europe for not producing ammunition. And that really...
Oh, by the way, you need to put your 5% GDP on your defense budget.
But you can see here that there's some good charts here, but this is kind of a imports, industrial production ratio, energy-intensive sectors. We can see that as soon as the Ukraine war hits, everything was struggling because of the lockdowns. It ramped up, and then ever since late, kind of from 2022, it has just reduced and reduced and reduced, and also caused more imports. You have again, an adjusted chart here, but what happens is that you have heavy industry in Europe and resource-intensive, energy-intensive industry especially declining, and imports increasing as they're supposed to be ramping up their internal defense production. The two don't line up. You have rapid further decline in energy-intensive heavy industry Europe-wide, whilst also there is this push and idea that there will be defense. And where this has led is that I know people have been quite hyperbolic about it. People talk, oh, this changes everything and all that. But legitimately what happened with Iran in Israel, with America effectively running out of missiles in the region, is quite big. This does blow a hole in American global strategy, because
that is that is the happening as opposed to the actual missile launching itself. The fact that they've ran out effectively of missiles is more important than they had a pissing contest.
Yes, and what's really happening is decline. This is a great vindication that we try and hammer it into people. What is happening constantly. It is happening, but what is happening is decline. And this is a great illustration of the effects of decline. America and Europe and the global elites must keep rival power centers in a constant state of decline in order to stay in power. But in doing so, they have made sure that practically nothing can get done. They have made sure that they do not have the assistance of the white manufacturing base basically that exists in the 40s that they have spent 80 years destroying. They have spent 80 years degrading the original population, undermining white America and undermining the original populations of European countries. And in doing so, they have made them less able to produce arms. And they are now kind of reaping the whirlwind in that maybe America will go on more diplomacy-heavy strategy, but the background of industrial decline, all the stuff we've been seeing, all of the outsourcing, all of it has finally come home to roost in the way that everybody who was a traditionalist said it would come home to roost. In that we no longer manufacture anything, we no longer have the ability to know how to manufacture things, and all we know how to do is throw money at problems, and we don't know how these things get fixed anymore.
It's very much like, I've said this to my parents, the Sheffield Forge Masters are apparently building a new press, right? So they're extending the factory and they're putting in a new massive. I mean, I can't remember how many. It's hundreds of tons. It's hundreds and hundreds of tons for a press to make forgings and everything else. And it's obviously to do with MOD because Forge Masters got bought out by MOD. Effectively, and I said this to my dad, that new factory that they're extending in Sheffield, that will take possibly upwards of, say, 3-4 years just to build the factory. Then you've got years, right? It doesn't just, it's not like a switch. You can't just turn it on. Then you need to spend years training people to operate inside that factory. Then it takes years on top of that to then start manufacturing various products or weapon or whatever you're doing out of it to then either sell it immediately or to store it. So we're talking a project that really is going to take upwards of 15 to 20 years to complete to actually have a stockpile of things that's made out of it. 20 years.
One of the problems they have as well, in that parts of the machine will chase its own tail. In Europe especially, you have a huge amount of environmental regulations. There's a nitrogen crisis. Now, a lot of those things have been waived for arms factories to be made. But you still have the basic economics that it just isn't economically viable to produce armaments in Western Europe, because Western Europe is based around having a services economy and not based around having a proper manufacturing base. And that has been done deliberately. That has been built into the structure of liberal societies to the point that you would have to completely transform that society to make it able to produce arms at quantity. And that's what they're facing up to. They're facing up to the fact that they have structured weak nations with conflicting demographics, with high energy prices, with low investment, and with low take-home pay comparatively because of inflation. And they are now expecting these low production economies that they have systematically beaten down on purpose
to go to war.
To go to war for them. And it's just not going to work. That's
right, slave. Go in the trench.
Yes.
Get in the trench. But effectively is what's happening.
I talked about this. This is, again, the thing on screen there is from the Skills Collapse, which is from 2023. We did a stream on it. It's one of our more watched streams, one of our more read pieces. But this was really obviously going to happen. I'm glad that we're able to talk about it now, because this is something that I've been talking about and we've been talking about for a long time. Again, 2023, it became very obvious. But a couple of people talked about it before that. But the defense industry has completely been shown to have no clothes in America. They are not able to get the F-35 to work. They had the whole embarrassing Zumwalt thing. And their whole economy in terms of the military industrial side of it, has been shown to be a giant Rube Goldberg that does nothing. It's
Yep.
it's very funny.
I think even more recently as well, you can really hammer this home. So there was the M10 Booker. If you remember that's light tank.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. That's been cancelled.
Yep.
It's been cancelled. The M10 Booker's been cancelled. The Ohio class submarines, they've got problems with them. And apparently, this is to do with like they have inspectors that are independent of the various companies that manufacture these things. So apparently, when these independent fellas came in, I think this is to do with more recent administration. They started just looking through various military equipment, and basically they've started cancelling various projects. So the M10 Book has been scrapped. I think it's the JTLV. It's like a mine-resistant four-wheeled vehicle that was meant to replace the Humvee. That's been cancelled because it wasn't actually mine-resistant because they hadn't tested it properly. It's almost like the Pentagon Wars. Like, just imagine that, but you apply it to all the new military stuff, all the new military equipment for the US. Just apply it to everything. They're just covering up the fact that these pieces of equipment don't actually work as intended. They just don't work. I mean, that's not even to go into the fact that our Trident missile system, that doesn't work either. It doesn't function.
And that's an expensive American import as well.
Yes, it is. It's American.
Missiles. Yes.
Yes. So we don't technically own that. That's theirs.
Yes.
Technically.
Which is, I get a lot of competing defense programs in NATO have been vetoed by the American administration. And really, the M4, those of you who know the story of the M14 and America's frankly retarded refusal to accept the FAL like the rest of the world, because in the 1950s, basically America tried to foist the M14 on NATO, and it was a rare occasion where NATO went, absolutely not, you're producing a piece of shite. And so everyone else went and got the right arm of the free world. And America went off and embarrassed itself and had to eventually redevelop the AR-15, the M16, which became a different platform. But America makes extremely bad decisions when it comes to what is NATO equipment. It has done so for many years. And what is coming on to roost is the fact that not only do these defense systems not work, the defense systems that did work have been forced out of existence to make people buy American products that don't work. So the entirety of NATO is now a big DEI bloated social stimulus joke. And the upshot of this is that what's happening in the headlines now, which is that Ukraine is being ground to dust, Kiev is being bombarded on a daily basis, and Putin is laughing at us. Because Trump jumped up and down and went, we want peace now. And Putin went, I'm winning on the ground. I could ignore you. And the thing is, with the stocks as low as they are, without the stockpile of precision munitions that can threaten Russia, their time horizons just keep getting longer and better. The more it goes on, the better their positions gets and the worse our position gets. And it's because of these decades worth of ignorant and arrogant, really, American policy within NATO that has led to a situation where the arms industry, not in the West, for NATO, simply doesn't function. I don't think we've got much else to shill here. I'm glad you brought that up. Apart from that, we do have the book still on sale. I will probably do some end shilling there. Is there anything you have to shill, Mr. Lewis? Or I've got your link down below to your little Substack. Well, you linked that, yeah.
Go on. No, sorry.
The Russian Substack thing, sorry?
Yes, that's from somebody else. That's not mine. That's a different fella. But that one's interesting because it gives you a different perspective on what's happening inside of Russia.
That's linked in the description.
That's linked to us. Yes, it's very different, and it when reading that, you might get the idea that what we've said applying to Russia might not be the case. In some cases, it is. In other cases, no. The Russians are not as strong as they were. They're not fantastic.
No.
But they're still actually in a better position than NATO is. That's really the point.
It's a game of shit and shitter, really, is what it is.
Yes, basically, it's Russia is shit, and then we're shitter. Yeah, it's a mid off is basically what it is. It's literally, it is literally a mid off. That is effectively what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with top end athletes. We're dealing with mid level retards. And one just happens to go to the gym 3 times a week. The other one just doesn't.
Anyway, to be fair, that's what we're covering today. I'll probably get some more related stuff to this done. I have a lot of projects that are ongoing. There may be surprises, not quite on the scale of the book, but there will be surprises coming up in future. Don't you worry. There's a lot going on in the background, stuff I can't really talk about, and stuff that just isn't really ready to be talked about yet. But we are very busy, but we don't have a lot of fruit for it a lot of the time. But thankfully, again, you guys have been great with the book. Thank you for coming on, Lewis. And all I really have to say now is, what is it? No, that's the wrong one. God damn it! Buy book. Yeah, you buy book. You buy book now. Buy book. And thanks for watching, guys.